listening to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro, the place to learn about new technology and technological advances before they become mainstream. This podcast is sponsored by Ingram Micro's Imagine Next. It's not about the destination. It's about going someplace you never thought possible. Go to imaginenext.ingrammicro.com to find out more. Let's get into it.
Welcome to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro. I'm your host, Shelby Skrhak, and our guest today is Sanjay Jhawar, co-founder and chief strategy officer for RealWear. Sanjay, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, today we are talking about assisted reality for the industrial frontline worker. But to start off, Sanjay, tell us about yourself and RealWear as a company.
Starting with myself, I'm the co-founder of the company. We've been around for a little over 6 years. RealWear is very much the leader in a subcategorization of the broader augmented reality space, and that is what we call enterprise assisted reality. And what assisted reality is really a style of augmented reality that is focused on rugged industrial enterprises, major industrial companies on a global basis where health and safety is an important consideration for the users.
So assisted reality, it's like a see what I see headset, basically.
Yes. So the design of the headset is a device that fits around the head in a kind of semicircular arc. It's not a pair of glasses that you would see in the movies, but it is a very capable device. The display that you look at is only on one eye, not on both eyes. So it allows you to have most of your vision unobstructed. And that's very important for health and safety in industrial environments where you don't want to have your vision blocked to the point where there's a safety hazard, such as a forklift truck or a steam valve in a factory or a plant. And our type of device gives you around a 20-degree field of view on one eye. And it's able to last an entire shift long, 8 to 10 hours on a single battery. It's able to connect over Wi-Fi or cellular with the appropriate accessories. And it has a very high performance camera. And so a lot of what the use cases are around is this idea that the camera is worn on the head and a remote person, an expert or a technical support specialist for a technician is able to remotely see the field of view. And so the camera is facing forward. It's not facing back towards the user's head, unlike a Zoom call, for example, where we're seeing each other's faces. Here, the remote person is seeing the external scene. Think of it a bit like a GoPro type of idea, except that it's really fit for purpose for industrial use, and it includes, live connectivity and lots of other features. It's an Android system too, so it can run many other applications beyond that, but those are often the applications that customers go to first and get the immediate first value from the system.
So I'm glad that we're going into kind of the design, basically what it looks like, because I think we want to paint this picture of what this tool is, because it's certainly not ubiquitous in the field. Yes,
let me try and delineate that a little more on this audio podcast. So what you have is a horseshoe-shaped device. It goes over your head and goes around the back. It's pretty thin on the back. On the left and right side, it's a little thicker, maybe a little over an inch and a quarter, maybe thick on each side. The right-hand side, I would say the side with the camera, because you can flip the whole thing over, depending on which eye you want to wear it on. But the side with the camera on it also has the processor, the speaker, a few buttons, and the camera itself can be pointed up or down independently from the display. And then there's a whole boom arm that's articulated, upon which the display is situated. And that display can move up and down. There are actually 6 degrees of freedom. You can move it around. And most of the time, end users are positioning the display slightly below the line of sight. So it's not blocking a field of view. You're able to look over it and you just glance down. So think of it like the dashboard in your car, right? Your eyes are on the road, your hands are on the wheel. You need to look down at something on your dashboard. You look down for a second or two or three, and you look back up again because it's really important for you to be safe. And you can't be, texting and driving or things like that, right? So the analogy here is that you want a heads-up display, but it doesn't block your field of view. It's right there underneath your field of view, and you have lots of adjustment and many ways to kind of set it up so that it is optimally fitted. Now, the other side, there's a connecting piece that joins the two sides together. It's a springy arm. It can actually be adjusted in such a way that it can fit lots of different head sizes and also hard hats and other protective equipment, but baseball caps, bump caps. The other side mostly contains the battery, a fingerprint sensor, which is also something that you can use to turn the device on. So it's an on-off switch, and fingerprint sensor is used for security and authentication. And the battery itself is removable and swappable. And in fact, there's a backup battery inside, so you can actually take the battery off and put a new one on and keep your video call going or keep your application going for 3 or 4 minutes, whilst you bring out your other battery. Batteries are pretty lightweight. The whole system is quite light. It is about 272 grams. And there are different accessories that you can add for different ways to attach it to your head. As I mentioned, there's something we call the work band, which is a kind of a headband. There's clips for all kinds of hard hats, from climbing hats to regular hard hats to full brim to front brim hard hats, and many different countries. And there's baseball caps and bump caps and lots of different ways to wear it depending on the use case, the environment, the requirements of the health and safety department on what you're required to wear. And as we've been doing this for many years in many countries with many customers, I think we've seen pretty much every flavor under the sun of requests of way to mount it and way to be safety compliant. So we have many solutions that have been deployed and built for different head mount options. These are all very important for the industrial space. These may not be the things that you think about if you're thinking about augmented reality from a consumer space or as a gamer or as some kind of Kingsman glasses. That's not really what this is. This is a fit for purpose industrial solution. It does very well at the job it's designed for.
Is that a movie reference? Kingsman glasses.
Kingsman. Yeah. That's a movie with lots of British characters, which is why I go to it. But
yes,
we have other American movies too.
It's a favorite.
Yeah,
and violently violent, but that's a different podcast. But I did look up the grams conversion there. So that's about 9.5 ounces for those who don't have a reference for grams.
Yes.
All right. So you touched on this then, how assisted reality really is it coexists with augmented or mixed reality, but it's a different, very more tangible, a more real life example. I guess, is that how you would describe it?
Yeah, I think that the way to think about this is, there's a spectrum of what people have generally referred to as augmented reality. Mm-hmm. And I think what a lot of people have heard of in the tech industry, if you've been following it, is things like the Microsoft HoloLens, or more recently, the Magic Leap devices. These are very immersive. They cover both eyes. They aim for the maximum field of view possible. And in the optical solution that they have to use to make that work, you necessarily darken the field of view. In order to get your see-through display to work against the real world, you basically have to darken the real world significantly. And in order to get the display electronics and optics, you have to put them somewhere. So you're going to obstruct your field of view, whether it's above or to the side, to some degree. So you necessarily lose a certain amount of situational awareness. So and what you're getting is the maximum immersion. And so when you lose situational awareness, you're losing some safety. When your field of view is darkened or your field of view is reduced, You may get more immersion of the display, but you're getting, if you like, less real world directly into your field of view. So that is very valuable and helpful in kind of indoor situations or in training situations or places where it's really not that dangerous.
Yeah.
But in places where you're out in an oil field, you're out in a factory, you're perhaps in a place where there's electrical hazards, you're climbing a wind turbine wearing a harness, you're doing line work. These types of situations, you're in a factory with robots moving around you and you've got to be really careful. These are places where safety is a higher consideration. And in those environments, customers are looking for a different balance of immersion versus safety. And so the assisted reality subcategory, which is where RealWear is the leader, is really targeting that type of usage. And that type of usage means you've got critical information when you need it, but your cognition is held in the real world more, much like driving that car, right? Your eyes are on the road and you glance down at your dashboard and you can read some things. You could even read some text. You could talk to it with your voice, but you're not taking your cognition out of the real world. Unlike, let's say, virtual reality, where you don't see the real world at all. Some of the hybrids, there are some pass-through solutions where you see the real world, but it's passed through the camera. And, there are different trade-offs for different purposes. Often they're done for training. Often they're done for people who are not in hazardous environments. Those are all very valid use cases too. And there are other products from other companies that do that. But we specialize in this assisted reality that we call it. And it seems to be a very good fit for all kinds of industrial companies and all kinds of industries.
Well, I'm glad you went into some of those industries that RealWear works within: automotive, consumer goods, manufacturing, like food and beverage, and you mentioned the oil and gas industries. So tell us about RealWear's work with Ford dealers and service departments.
Yes, we're very proud of this. Ford in the across the Americas, especially all of the US dealerships, and then increasingly in other countries around the world, is using the RealWear HMT1, which is our original device for dealer service assistance. And so essentially the way this works is you bring your car into a dealership, there's some issue. If it's not immediately obvious what it is, then they have to call the technical assistance center. And so a dealer employee who has been trained by Ford now calls a dealer assistance center at Ford, where there are Ford employees who are experts. And their job is to help the dealer figure out what the issue is. Typically, this was done, through phone calls or maybe text messages. And the challenge with that was you've got your hands in the engine, you've got you're under the car, there's a safety issue there too. You often need both hands because you've got tools. Maybe you're holding a multimeter. Maybe you're doing an optical strobe on some moving part. I mean, there are all kinds of things you do. And these days, cars are very complex. There's a lot of electronics in there. And it's not that everybody necessarily knows every single thing. So there's a lot of coaching required. This challenge is getting more acute because there's more and more electric vehicles coming in. Ford is one of the leaders in deploying electric vehicles, especially the electric F-150 and other vehicles. And the dealers generally do not have the same level of expertise and training on electric vehicles that they do on internal combustion engines. Even internal combustion engines are very complicated with all the electronics now and all the diagnostics. So there's more and more need to do these service escalations. And what you're able to do with the solution that we have in partnership with TeamViewer, which is our software partner for this use case, you're able to call the technical assistance center remotely, and they can see what you can see with very, very good camera performance, image stabilization, so it's not jerky. The video feed is stable, and you can, in minutes, diagnose what might otherwise take days, hours, months. We've had cases, not with Ford, but with a commercial van company which is one of my favorite examples, where you have a commercial van that wouldn't start, was in the dealership, and it took 21 days where they weren't able to figure out why this van wouldn't start. By using the RealWear device and the remote assistant, they were able to troubleshoot it in 30 minutes. And so, think about a commercial van. A commercial van is actually preventing somebody else's revenue. Whoever runs that van in their business needs it to make their deliveries and move their equipment around. And if that van is not available, then the business has got significant downtime. So in cars, we're really seeing is that the amount of time your car is in the shop is affected by how long it takes to do the service escalation. And in many cases, with these more modern vehicles, with a lot more electronics and EV components, they're sending people out from Ford to get to the dealership specifically to help troubleshoot that. So now you don't have to send people out. You can remotely consult through the headset, and you can turn what was days, hours, weeks of downtime into minutes in some cases. And so the productivity of that dealer field force is improved a lot. The cost of service has improved a lot. And the customer satisfaction has improved a lot. And as technicians are experiencing this type of looking over the shoulder assistance from the true expert back at Ford, they're also along the way getting trained, right? Getting trained on the job. They have formal training, but there's nothing like, having an expert standing next to you, showing you exactly what the issue was and how you solve it. But now we don't need that expert to stand next to you. That expert is remote. And that expert, by the way, can service many more people at the same time because they don't have to be physically there, right? So the productivity of that expert force is also multiplied. So Ford has rolled this out to all US dealerships, and it's now expanding into other countries. And to our knowledge, and no one's contradicted me in several months so far, so I think this is true, this is the world's largest enterprise augmented reality deployment of any flavor, not just assisted reality, at a single customer. And we're up to, I don't know if I can disclose it, but we're up to multiple thousands of devices in the US and more internationally as well.
Well, to unpack some of that, yes, RealWear's use for this kind of specialized automotive tuning, makes a lot of sense. You mentioned the electric vehicles. Also, I understand that the Ford GT it's not a car that every service mechanic is trained on. So being able to have this, I imagine, helps a little bit of the distance, making sure that, you can get this knowledge and it's not limited to location, correct?
That's right, yes. Something like the Ford GT, is a very high-end vehicle. There aren't very many authorized dealerships. They're trying to generate a super premium service experience for a super premium car. It's all part of the ownership experience. And so that's one of the places discovered and started. And then, of course, the benefits also accrue to all the much less expensive cars, which are in much higher volume. But the initial driver for all of this in our early engagements with Ford were around customer satisfaction for super premium vehicles. But as the benefits were experienced, and Ford was already looking for using the latest technology in their technical assistance centers. And so, these two things came together and we were able to work with the software partners. It was very important to integrate with their systems. And that's where TeamViewer came in, and also one of our system integrators, Tech Mahindra. So then the supply and logistics and delivery, of course, were through Ingram Micro. And that group of companies together have really come together to produce something that can scale quite rapidly. For the most part, we're deploying between 250 and 500 devices per quarter as we went through the rollout. And I think it's still continuing. And as the US kind of gets completely fulfilled, we still have the rest of North America. And then we're seeing significant deployments already in other parts of the world, both Europe and Asia and Australia. So I think this thing is going to keep going for a while. right now our footprint is one device per dealership. But when you think about a typical Ford dealership, there are between typically 4 and 8 service bays. And so where we hope and expect this will go is that eventually, and I have to be clear that Ford hasn't exactly placed the purchase order for this, but eventually we hope and expect that we'll have one device per service bay rather than one per dealership. And so you can kind of see where this goes. I mean, this industry is huge, and this is just Ford is the largest such customer, but we have many other automotive customers, both in the US and across the world. And so this transition to more sophisticated systems, more sophisticated support, EVs, this is going on across the world. And ultimately, we think that all dealer service locations of all vehicles worldwide will ultimately be using technology like this. Hopefully, much of it from us. I mean, there are some other people out there too, but we're certainly by far and away the leader in the volume deployments to date.
Yeah. Well, what about other remote assistants? Can you share some of the more common uses for RealWear's headsets?
Yeah, so we've talked a lot about automotive, and that's both in dealer servicing as well as manufacturing. We have quite a few customers in manufacturing. That's about quality inspection in manufacturing, making sure that there aren't cosmetic details or all the bolts are on the wheels correctly. There's some computer vision solutions that we have with IBM that are involved with that. And then there's the machine, the robot commissioning, the robot repair, the other tools and equipment that they have to use in factories. So there's a whole other side, which is the manufacturing side. And then within automotive, I would say there's not just cars, there's cars, there's trucks, big commercial trucks like both in Europe and in North America, engines for big commercial trucks. All of these things are sort of part of the automotive space where we find lots of opportunities. Outside of automotive, there are a couple other verticals which are very strong for us. One is consumer goods manufacturing. Our largest customers there are in food and beverage manufacturing, and to some degree also in distribution. So in manufacturing, a good example customer would be someone like Colgate-Palmolive, where they're making toothpaste and pet food, and it's very high throughput business, and so the cost of downtime of any of that manufacturing equipment can be very high. So Colgate, for example, their current generation toothpaste filling machines do 800 tubes of toothpaste per minute, which is 48,000 tubes of toothpaste per hour. And they're about $1 each wholesale. So, when that machine stops working and you've got almost $50,000 an hour of lost production, right? And so that, and if it takes 12 hours, 24 hours for the vendor to come out and fix it, then you've got a very large downtime. So that's another area where we found a lot of traction was in high volume consumer goods manufacturing, whether it's toothpaste or food, or we have customers in metal manufacturing, all kinds. And then the equipment that goes into those manufacturing facilities, as well as the inspection of the goods themselves. There's training as well as just simple remote video calls. So there's a whole category of what we call guided work instructions. So if you think of the first challenge is something's broken, I need to fix it urgently now, I need to call an expert because the clock is ticking. That's where a lot of customers start because that's the highest value problem. But once you get beyond that, it's like, well, I don't want to have the downtime to begin with. So, how do I do scheduled maintenance or scheduled inspections? And can we take digital records of these scheduled inspections? I got both hands free, got my camera on my head. We're able to follow guided work instructions, undo this casing, look at the condition of this gear wheel, check the wiring here, whatever it might be. Go through your lockout, tag out, turn off the electricity before you start, and go step by step through a series of instructions. Those instructions will appear on your screen, and you'll just use your voice to check off whether or not you passed or failed. We have a lot of vehicle inspection cases like that as well at places in the oil and gas industry. And then we get into mentioning oil and gas. Another really large area for us is oil and gas, upstream, midstream, and downstream. Particularly, I would say upstream and downstream. Upstream being exploration and production, both onshore and offshore, and downstream being a lot of refining. So refineries, plants that are making polyethylene or polypropylene or gasoline, frankly. And again, all of those industries are looking for efficiency. They're looking for improved health and safety compliance. They're looking for fewer leaks. They're looking for better maintenance. It's all about predictive maintenance. Some of our customers, our big customers, are Shell, Exxon, and around the world. And what's important there for many of those field environments is that the device itself is safety compliant. And one of the things you need in hydrocarbon environments is you need to have devices that are incapable of causing an explosion, incapable of having a fault where you could generate a spark that could ignite, hydrocarbons, gasoline, natural gas, and cause a hazard. So these companies and the regulators require a certification which is called intrinsically safe. It means the device itself is not capable of igniting an explosive atmosphere. And RealWear is one of the very few companies that makes intrinsically safe head-mounted devices. And as a result, most of the world's largest oil and gas refiners and explorers are using RealWear devices in many different regions. And intrinsically safe is also useful in the pharmaceutical industry because you have some biopharma manufacturing cases where, again, you have solvents and the concern about ignition, and you have to take appropriately certified devices, and you can't take your iPhone in, you can't take your normal, laptop in. There are certain zones where you have to leave all those things behind and only use the approved devices. So in the head-mounted category, we are by far and away the leader of the intrinsically safe device.
So the uses are certainly widespread and really fascinating. I mean, really cool stuff of how RealWear's headset can be put to multiple uses. And Ingram Micro is an authorized distributor for RealWear, but what's for partners or resellers who are hearing this or are thinking, well, that's probably just for that is for the Fords of the world. I don't have customers like that. I guess I would say, what's in it for those folks? Why is it beneficial to find opportunities to work with RealWear?
Well, I mean, first of all, we do have a Tiger team, outbound sales team ourselves. We sell about 90% through channel. So a lot of what we're doing is being the subject matter expert, helping our partners, our resellers to create the solutions, troubleshooting those solutions. Resellers add a lot of value with kitting, with training, with advanced replacement devices, and all those traditional services that hardware resellers do. In a lot of cases, resellers are involved in training and kitting, and our team is available to train resellers. We do lead generation. Resellers generate their own leads too, but we also do quite a bit of lead generation. We have many successful examples where either a reseller introduced a customer, but we were able to help that reseller expand the use cases in that customer and broaden it. And the other way around, where we just had a traditional lead that we generated and passed over, and that turned into customers. So this is business as usual, like many companies in our type of industry. We're still at a phase of this market where it needs some expertise to create a solution. And we're 6 years in our company, and we've done a lot of work to systemize and make easier to deploy these solutions. And the average sales cycle over those years has come down from 18, 24 months down to probably 3 to 6 months. And at the height of the pandemic, at the beginning, the sales cycle was very low because people really needed to have remote assistance. They couldn't get their people out at all. It's normalized a little bit, but the solutions are pretty mature now. Lots of customer references and lots of very proven business cases. So it's not pioneer sales most of the time, but it is an enterprise sales cycle. It does take 3 to 6 months, maybe 9 months depending on the customer. We've made great progress recently on device management with Microsoft Intune. And for a long time, we've had great support from VMware and SOTI, and those are important for customers. So a lot of these kind of thorny issues that over the last several years have largely been systemized and are now available for use. The RealWear devices are Android, but they're not what are known as GMS or Google Mobile Certified devices, because the certification is just not available for this form factor of device from Google. So we've had to work around the Google services and things like device management and other things which enterprises rely on. It has taken a number of years to kind of get all these things sorted out, but they're there now, right? So it's much easier to kind of get to the end of a sales cycle relatively quickly than it used to be, with the maturity that we now have, 6 years into beginning this journey.
Well, as we start to wrap up our episode, we always ask our guests the same final question. And that's, where do you see technology going in the next year? I know that's broad, but within this space or another arm, where do you see technology headed this year?
Yeah, well, I mean, technology is, always changing and getting more exciting. I mean, the trends that we see across the industry, and they're very applicable to us, greater use of AI. Our device is perhaps seen by our customers as a hardware device, but in truth, there are more software engineers at our company than hardware engineers. And a lot of them are working on user interface and increasingly working on how to leverage the data that's available at the customer sites in a secure way under customer control to derive insights from what's going on. So we see a lot more computer vision applications, object recognition applications coming in the future in these types of devices, ultimately recognizing which are the pieces of equipment that need the most human attention. A lot of what we're interested in at RealWear for the future is really understanding the interaction between the human and the asset, the machine. And if you think about it, a device that's worn on the head for large parts of the day, hopefully the whole day, because it's easy to use and easy to wear, is in an ideal place to really start to understand where the most interactions and intensity is required between the human workforce and their machine assets. So part of where we're going is starting to measure that, instrument that, and learn from it using AI, so that we'll ultimately, several years down the road here, we'll be able to predict what the user is likely to want before they even ask for it. So based on where you are, who was here before, what photos we have on hand, which PDFs did you access, or did another user in your role access in the past in this location, and blend all of that information together with third-party applications as well as some of our own cloud capabilities to continue to improve the efficiency and anticipate what the technician, the end user, is going to want to do. And that allows them to spend less time searching for information and less time doing the basics and more time really using their expertise to improve the performance on an ongoing basis. And so we really see elevating the frontline worker in terms of their skills, their learning, and their ability to access information, spending less time finding, manuals out of filing cabinets or trying to figure out where in your cloud folder is the right document. How long does it take me to get there? And do I have to carry a laptop up a wind turbine to do it? And more time really solving real problems and improving the performance of both the people and the assets, the plant, the machines and plant assets. So we think that we can continue to do this, drive this, learn from our customers, learn from the data that we're able to collect, and go through this virtuous cycle of improving the usability, improving the utility, and ultimately improving the business results for customers. And there is sort of no end to this. A lot of what we're doing is going from the command and control based voice control system that we have now to industrial natural language, which has to work in very high noise. We have our system works at 100 decibels, so it's incredibly loud. Getting a full natural language to work at 100 decibels, you can't do that with, Google Assistant, for example. There is a way to solve that. Those are things we're working on. And we'll just expand the value and the ease of use of these solutions to the point where they become just as ubiquitous as the smartphone, but for the industrial worker.
Excellent. Well, for listeners who wanted to find out more about what we talked about today, I understand that they can go to the Ingram US IoT team, and that email address is us.iot@ingrammicro.com. Where else can they find some more information?
Yeah, you can certainly go to RealWear's website, which is www.realwear.com. That's RealWear. And there's lots of information there, as well as resources and ability to reach our team. You can become, if you're not already a RealWear reseller, we have a process for that. You can access that through the website as well. And our reseller team can get in touch with you. And, lots of resources available for the channel.
Sanjay, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. It was a great pleasure.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in and subscribing to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro. If you like this episode or have a question, please join the discussion on Twitter with the hashtag B2B Tech Talk. Until next time, I'm Shelby Skrhak.
You've been listening to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro. This episode was sponsored by Ingram Micro's Imagine Next. B2B Tech Talk is a joint production with Sweetfish Media and Ingram Micro. Ingram Micro production handled by Laura Burton and Christine Fan. To not miss an episode, subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform.